We're recording, and I am going to pass it off to Greg Hill, who is our star of the 12-month challenge. He's been leading the charge on behalf of all the athlete ambassadors, and yeah, really inspiring us to stick with it throughout the whole thing. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Izzy. Izzy's been skiing all day, so she's got skier hair right now, which is great.
Yeah, I think I got a bit of a sunburn too.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. March, the Minimize Your Energy Month, and it's kind of an interesting one because it's not one that I'm doing well at. I honestly like, turning out your lights and all the vampire energy every night. It's I find it's effective, but it's too much work. And I think a lot of the stuff I've always found is that you want it to be easy, and it's not that easy a month for me. And then trying to have my family want a cooler house and stuff like that. My family's not like Dave Erb, who somehow they all wear sweaters around their house and stuff, but I can't seem to get away with that here. But so for me, the biggest thing that really reflect on is different ways to offset it, or different ways to get better energy. And I mean, we're lucky enough in BC, it's 98% BC hydro, so that's a plus. But I use natural gas, so then I've offset with Bullfrog for about $33 a month. And I'm really curious to hear from Dave Borins tonight, who works with Bullfrog, because he'll help explain what my money's doing, because I'm personally curious to see if it's methane capture, where it all comes from. But yeah, I'd like to introduce Dave Borins. He works with local communities to help provide support for future renewable energy projects. And Dave's quite educated, and he's going to give us some insights on Bullfrog energy and offsets and whatever else he rambles on about. So welcome, Dave. I'm curious to hear what you've got to say, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. I'll pass it off to you and have a listen.
Thanks so much. It's really an honor to speak with this group, and I'm interesting to know that you all have been doing this for a monthly challenge and working on stuff, and I think it's great that this group exists. I'm an avid outdoor enthusiast, so it's nice to speak to my people. One thing I just wanted to briefly comment on with what Greg said is just how guilt-ridden we get about these types of things. You're trying to keep your energy low, and when you leave your lights on, or not only does the people in your household yell at you, but you also feel guilty, like you failed. And I was seeing very recently I don't know if people watch John Oliver, but he did a whole thing about recycling this week. And one thing, that eco guilt is a real thing, sure. And one thing that he was really trying to drive home, and I think is a good place to start, is that the guilt is part of the it's sort of a way of shifting the guilt onto us as individuals, where it's really like the decisions that need to be made are much larger scale. And he was talking in the context of recycling, and how we feel so guilty that we're recycling poorly, but really we've been sort of, and this is a whole other thing that I didn't plan on speaking about, but it's really on the people who are creating these products and creating these, so your energy system, it's on the people who are controlling where your energy comes from, that like it's their guilt, because they've set the system up in a way that makes us emit even if we don't want to. What an organization like Bullfrog does, and I'll go into it in just a sec, is hopefully alleviates some of that guilt, but it's certainly, we don't want to be in a situation where, oh, you're paying Bullfrog, therefore it's okay that the rest of the system is really dirty. And BC, where Greg, as you alluded to, is a fairly clean in terms of electricity. With that unplanned ramble, I'm going to share my screen and get into sort of our presentation. It's a mixture of a little bit of climate reality. If you, I'm sure we're preaching to the choir, so I'll go a little quickly on that stuff, and then I'll kind of jump into what Bullfrog does in the second part of the presentation, and I'll be conscious of time the best I can, which hopefully will be fairly conscious of time. Let's get right to the beginning here. And oh, so sorry, I forgot to do the thing where, sorry, do this one more time. We share audio at the same time. Advanced computer audio. What happened here? Sorry, this should be smoother than it is.
Something I can do from my end?
I don't think so. I think I'm just being a Luddite right now. Or not a Luddite, or whatever you call it when you're using technology poorly.
I think it happens to all of us on one call. So
sorry, what am I doing here? Where's the chat? Oh. Sorry about this. One sec. Let me try this one more time. I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. I'm so sorry. Yes, I do occasionally do this for a living. Here we go. Everybody see that? We have a lovely quote. It's really important. Just wanted to set the tone because like music and art, love of nature it's a common language. It's not political. These things should not be political, but they are. But I think of them not in political terms, but in sort of moral terms, in the most part. So we'll just kind of jump in here for a second. This, as those on the West Coast would know, is the Great Barrier Rainforest. I'm in Toronto, so I live quite far away. It's the Great Bear Rainforest. And these are Komodo bears or spirit bears. And I didn't know that they existed in real life. I thought they were a dreamlike creature that I had read in a book when I was young and didn't realize they were real until I saw this National Geographic. And this is from 2011. And I was reading this National Geographic. And at the time, I was not involved in the environmental world, but I loved hiking and I loved canoe tripping and all sorts of stuff. And I realized that these things were real and they were in Canada, and B, they were under threat from the pipelines that were being planned at the time. And at the time, it was the Northern Gateway pipeline. And I realized that if I didn't sort of get interested in why that was, then we would be in bad shape. And this led me down a rabbit hole that basically leads me to this presentation and my role at Bullfrog, because I kind of sprung into action and I was like, oh my goodness, what more can I learn about this all? And so I learned more about climate change. And as we all know, it's an issue of trapping too much CO2. It traps the radiation. Too much CO2 makes it harder for the radiation to spring back into the atmosphere. And we just get this big warm blanket that is nice in some situations, but for the most part is incredibly destabilizing. And what we found is the largest source of global warming pollution is the burning of fossil fuels. And so we sort of are trying to mobilize into a world where we are minimizing fossil fuels. And all is not lost. Let's go through some hope. This is straight out of the Al Gore playbook here, but in 1980, AT&T, telecom company, they thought that by the year 2000 there'd be almost 1 million cell phone uses, and the actual figure was quite a lot more than that, 120 times what they thought. And that was in the year 2000. There was 109 million cell phone uses by that year. And there are now more cell phone connections than there are people. And why am I talking about cell phones? Because it was a technology that they were totally wrong about. And so the reason is that they were wrong, and I'm sure you intelligent people maybe know this already, is that they were wrong because the cost dropped. You know, cell phones when we were younger were much more expensive. The quality improved dramatically, and all the low-income nations that had no landline grids, they leapfrogged the old technology. And what I'm thankful to tell everybody is that the exact same thing is happening with renewable energy. Cost is dropping sharply. The quality and the efficiency of it is improving dramatically, and all the places that did not previously have the ability to connect to a grid and get they're reliant on diesel generation or no electricity whatsoever. They're not waiting for the grid connections. They're just using a decentralized technology that allows them to leapfrog the old technology. It's moving quickly. They projected, Morgan Stanley, that but this is by no means an eco warrior organization. They projected that by 2020, renewables will be the cheapest form of new power generation across the globe. It said that solar energy is the cheapest form of energy in the history of the world as of this past year. So, what does that mean? This says my internet is unstable, but that's okay. Not the only thing. The cheapest form of new power generation across the globe, and this has come true. So, where does Bullfrog fit into this? That's just sort of the backdrop. We have a world where we're trying to speed up the transition to renewable energy, and that's kind of what Bullfrog is trying to do. So let's kind of dig into it. Our mission as an organization, and again, I don't want to get too infomercial here, but I'll try and explain to Greg where his money's going at the very least. So our mission is to inspire and empower businesses and individuals to lead the way in creating a renewably powered future. And here's where I don't know if sound is going to work. And so my hope is that it will. Share sound. I think I'm doing that now. Let me know if this video works, because here's the 2-minute explainer of what Bullfrog is and how it works. And so we'll jump from there.
Choosing green energy is a simple way to reduce your carbon footprint and help transition Canada to a green energy future. Any business can choose to become Bullfrog powered with 100% renewable energy. Bullfrog Power is proud to offer renewable low-carbon solutions for electricity, natural gas, and transportation fuel. So how exactly does Bullfrog Power work? Currently, a lot of Canada's energy comes from non-renewable sources. For example, our electricity comes from things like coal, natural gas, and nuclear, depending on which province you're in. These conventional sources can cause pollution and contribute to climate change. They can damage our environment, affect our health, and leave behind a legacy of radioactive waste. When you choose Bullfrog Power, you're changing the way energy is generated on your behalf. It's a matching system. Bullfrog looks at how much conventional energy your business uses, and then injects the same amount of energy into the energy system from a renewable source. Whether you choose green electricity, green natural gas, or green fuel, it all works the same. Bullfrog ensures the energy going onto the system for your business is from renewable sources, displacing energy from conventional sources on the grid, pipeline, or fuel system. You maintain your relationship with your existing energy provider, and Bullfrog Power sends you a separate invoice for the greening of your energy. No changes to your business are needed. Even leased or rented spaces can become Bullfrog powered. In addition to addressing your carbon footprint, when you choose renewable energy from Bullfrog Power, you're also helping us to support community-based green energy projects across Canada. The Bullfrog Powered community has already helped fund more than 140 projects across Canada. Plus, Bullfrog provides marketing and communication tools to help Bullfrog-powered businesses spread the word to their employees, customers, and communities about their support for green energy. Thanks to your organization for joining the Bullfrog-powered community and helping transition Canada to a low-carbon economy.
Oh, okay. So, I'm assuming that the sound worked because I didn't hear otherwise. And basically what we're trying to do is change the system beneath where the power is coming from. So in a sense, it's taking away your eco guilt for using these products. One thing that's worth to note, you may have noticed from the video, it was geared specifically towards businesses. There's one that exists also for individuals and community members. But what I found is this one is a little bit more to the point and detailed. There's less corny jokes in it. And also what we found, Bullfrog was started 15 years ago. And at the time, the goal was specifically geared towards homes. If we could get every home to buy Bullfrog, we would change the whole system. And which is true, except the amount of homes there are in this country is quite many, and each one isn't using that much power. So we realized that we could have a great impact by focusing on energy using businesses. So we have about 10,000-12,000 homes producing Bullfrog power, and we have about 1,500 businesses. The businesses are like 95% of the power that we're actually displacing. And so again, we have electricity, green natural gas, green fuel, 3 options that it kind of creates a complete I'll call it a scrubbing, but most people are using those 3 things, and if not others. And in various provinces, it's more one thing than the other. Some types of companies that are Bullfrog powered are names some names you don't, but and not all of them are always Bullfrog powered, but for the most part, we've had a really long standing relationship with a lot of these pretty noticeable brands. But the big thing that we're proud of is our association with the environmental community. David Suzuki Foundation, WWF, Pembina. These are 3 organizations that we genuinely ask for feedback if we're offering new products or purchasing from a new project. Often we're going to try and make sure that they're in line with the philosophies of the environmental community, because it's really important that although we're a for-profit business, that we are operating with that sort of within the social contract that we try to do our best to adhere to. We also have an offset company. So this is what they're showing here is less.ca. If you're flying Air Canada and you go to their offset page, they're sending you to less.ca. It might be worthwhile to briefly talk about the difference between offsets and displacements, which is the difference between less and Bullfrog. When you have an offset, you have emitted the power or the carbon, and then you're trying to make up for it after the fact. So you would use an offset for something that you cannot avoid whatsoever. Like if you're flying on a plane, you're going to be responsible for a portion of that carbon footprint from the jet fuel. You can't avoid it. And so an offset is a good option for that. When it comes to something like your electricity, and what Bullfrog does is it's preventing the power from being, or the carbon from being emitted in the first place. So you're preventing it as opposed to making up for it. Always better to not do the thing as opposed to apologize for the thing that you've done. In most cases, you never know. And also worth noting that we are a subsidiary of a company called Spark Power, which is more of a general electrical contractor. So they've purchased a bunch of companies across North America, but a lot of it is in the renewable realm. So whereas Bullfrog originally was just sort of marketing and sales and buying and selling these renewable energy certificates, now we actually are part of an organization that has people in trucks that can go and fix things and change things and build things, and that's really exciting because it gives us a lot more scope of what we can accomplish. And they do a lot of work on renewable projects, so it's cool to see the scale of things has grown considerably over the years. And this is what I'm most excited about, is community projects. To talk a little bit about it, I saw for a second that somebody from the Indigenous Clean Energy ICE network was on. I saw somebody's name there, but that's an organization we've supported. And one of the things that we're trying to do is help build projects so people know that projects are A, being built, and B, being really viable. That's me. Hi, Susanna. I love the organization. I'd love to know more about the work you've done with it. But all I can say is that one of the things that we've noticed is that when there's a renewable energy project in a community, the people in that community are more likely to support renewable energy as a viable option. And so by having kind of emblematic projects built around the country, all of a sudden it's not like science fiction, it becomes very real and very viable. And that's one of the things that I'm really proud of is finding these projects and essentially just giving them money and sometimes offering contacts and ways of getting the things built. But it's a lot about bridging the gap between, sometimes you need a certain amount of money in order to unlock other money, and that's often the role we'll play, is trying to bridge the gap to get funding for these projects. Is my screen frozen here? It's a lovely slide, don't get me wrong. Okay, here, well, what just happened here? This is an example of a project that we've supported by purchasing the renewable energy certificates from. We have gone too fast, too quickly. What happened here? But you can see this is in Manitoba. It's at the time the biggest solar project in Manitoba. It's a megawatt, and it helped build jobs in the community. I don't know how long I'm going to be stuck on this slide, but it is a really cool project that I'm proud to. Let me. I'm gonna stop this share and see if I can do it again just to get back into it. I'm not sure what happened there, but I just wanted to roll through a few of these projects that we're supporting, so you get an idea of what I'm talking about here. And now let me try and get back into that. Let's share. Okay, where are we? I'm sure that when I gonna take me right to the beginning. Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. Okay, this is the recap for everybody who's come late. Luckily, it's not a huge project. Okay, so Fisher River, this is what it looks like. Again, we're sourcing as part of our mix. It's the first large-scale solar project we've been able to source from. Most of the other power is wind and low-impact hydro. Just a bit about that project. Another one, here's a wind co-op that we supported in Woodstock, Ontario. I always joke that I'm like the person, I'm always 2 away from the person cutting the ribbon. Not even, I was taking a picture in that case. This is a public school in Toronto that has a solar array on the roof. The idea was to use it as a teaching tool for the kids, and the parents actually banded together to create a co-op to build it. And I love cooperative methods because that way there's revenue sharing amongst the community. This is in Vulcan, Alberta. It's work of solar art, and it was designed to replicate. You can see in the back of these grain elevators that they were known for their Star Trek connection, but they're also known for being the center of grain elevators, 100 years ago. And so they tried to design the solar projects to reflect their statue, the elevators that used to be in the town. This is a community in Halifax. You can see it's really coast to coast, where you have children who are learning about indoor farming in the greenhouses and using solar to power the farming and lower the cost of the programs, so you help more kids learn about urban farming. It's a virtuous cycle, as I might say. This is in Hiawatha First Nation, the old railroad stop, a community right in, the signature building in the nation. And this is a partnership with one of our commercial customers. And it was a really great project. And this is my favorite because I got to go here, which if you're from Toronto is quite a long way to go on the company dime. But you can see on the roof of the Haida Heritage Center, that's the largest community-owned renewable project in British Columbia. And it's a way of lowering the costs and energy consumption of the largest building complex in Haida Gwaii. And Haida Gwaii is one of those places where, because it's remote, it's got a ton of diesel in its mix. And unfortunately, you have a really pristine environment, a really remote environment that is at risk from diesel spills and having to transport it and the cost of transporting it. So the more renewables you have in a place like Haida Gwaii, a huge impact in terms of carbon reduction you can have. And the other thing that it's important to show is that if solar can work in Haida Gwaii, which is notoriously a foggy place at times, it can work in just about anywhere. And lastly, I just wanted to sort of go back. It's people are talking about superheroes a lot, and this is an image from not the first Superman or the second Superman or even the third Superman. This is from number 4, Quest for Peace, which is generally thought of to be one of the worst movies ever made. But I saw it when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, and so it had a real impact on me. And because at the end of the movie, Superman takes this little kid named Billy, or I don't even know his name, Jimmy or something, takes him on a flyover of the world, and he says, "Tell everybody what you can see, little Jimmy." And he's flying. Of course, Jimmy doesn't have any kind of oxygen. I don't know how this is possible, but anyway, he's flying over, and he looks down and he says, "Superman, I see rivers, and I see oceans, and I see mountains, but I can't tell where one country begins and another country ends." And of course, when I'm 5 years old, this was like, this is the most incredible philosophical thing that I'd ever heard. We're all one Earth, and climate change is the thing. And I guess we've experienced with the pandemic as well. It doesn't respect borders. It's something that we have to work on as a world, as a humanity to correct some of the misgivings that we've done. And I think that it's the classic superhero thing. With great power comes great responsibility. In this case, it's with those who have the capacity to act, have a moral imperative to do so. And I leave you with just this one thing. I'm sure you may have seen it. I have checked it out. It is a true thing. It's not one of those fake news things. This is from 1912, and I just want you to read the description of coal consumption affecting climate. 1912, before the First World War, the furnaces of the world are now burning about 2 billion tons of coal a year. When this is burned, uniting with oxygen, it adds about 7 billion tons of CO2 to the atmosphere yearly. This tends to make the air a more effective blanket for the Earth and to raise its temperature. The effect may be considerable in a few centuries. So climate science was really, really clear in 1912. And it's happening a lot faster than a few centuries. So I do thank you all for what you are currently doing, and by gathering together and trying to work on these issues. It's a really, really impactful thing, and we don't have a lot of time to waste. So I appreciate that a group like yours exists. And that's me. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that was interesting, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, as the slide says. But I will stop sharing. That is not a bullfrog, by the way.
Hey, Dave, thanks a ton for that.
My pleasure.
Some good thoughts for sure. I mean, one of the things I'm curious about is you threw down the word certificate a few times. So initially when Bullfrog started, somebody would offset, say, 5 tons of methane, and then there'd be some other company out there that would be harvesting that, and then they'd give you a certificate for it, or how did that exactly work?
So the mechanism that we're essentially trading in is called a renewable energy certificate, so a REC. And so when let's say the turbine, or in the case of the natural gas, the methane is captured, it generates a renewable energy certificate, or a REC. What this signifies is a carbon reduction. Essentially, it's a way of counting that and putting a value onto lower carbon energy production. So what we do is we're procuring them, taking them out of the system, and retiring them on behalf of our customers. So essentially, when this low carbon power certificate is generated, it's not the kilowatt itself, it's not the gigajoule itself, it's the carbon reduction that it represents. And so we track it, and then we force ourselves to be audited every year to make sure that it's real, because it is a little bit of an ethereal thing. But it basically adds, it puts a price on, it like commodifies it. It's kind of like a self-imposed carbon tax in some ways, but how it could work in principle, the project that I pointed to during the presentation in Fisher River Cree Nation, they're getting money from, it's in Manitoba, right? So Manitoba is buying the power and they're using the power, and then what they're not using, they're selling to the Manitoba power grid, and it goes into the mix, the big mix. But every time they generate a kilowatt, that is a carbon-free kilowatt. It's a renewable energy certificate. And so by putting the certificate, or by recognizing it as such, they can commodify it. And so then we're buying all their certificates. What this does is, like, they don't care, they do care about the carbon reduction that's happening, but they don't mind if we pay them for that and sell them to, in this case, RBC. So RBC is giving us the money, which we're actually not taking a cut of in this specific project. We're just funneling that money right to the nation. The producer gets a higher return on their project. It becomes more valuable because of the carbon reduction. They're able to increase the revenue from the project. It's good for the community. RBC gets to say we've reduced the amount of carbon. So that's kind of how it works in a fashion. It's in some ways it's a means of bolstering the incentive to build renewable energy. Is one way to look at it.
And okay, so say with the green natural gas, you capture the methane, or somebody captures the methane. I'm paying for it. So that methane then gets used to burn, and basically it's net zero. So it goes back into the atmosphere. You capture it, it goes back in the atmosphere. Does that make sense?
It goes back into the sort of the cycle, right?
Yeah.
It gets injected into the pipeline. The gas, in terms of natural gas, it's instead of procuring fresh natural gas, it's being reused. So essentially, you're preventing the need to drill for more. Is sort of the method behind that. Or it's also preventing the need to do something like flare it, which is one way of getting rid of natural gas, that methane that's leaking. You just flare it and it's just, burning up into the atmosphere, or it's getting absorbed into the ground and just polluting like the groundwater and the earth. So it's a way of extracting it and reusing it in a imperfect but better than otherwise closed loop.
Yeah, and this displacement makes a lot more sense to me than offsetting, if we can.
If you can, there's not a lot of proof that the offsetting world has actually reduced a lot of power, because people will say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to offset it. It's sort of paying away your conscience. That being said, it's better than not doing it. And again, there's what it does do is often a lot of offsets, and the way they're set up are in developing nations. And so what that'll do is by doing a project, it's adding revenue to the community that builds the project that is being represented by the offset. And it's a really wide range too. When you're thinking about offsets, it could mean any number of different carbon reduction techniques.
Yeah, and that was one of the choices I had when I was looking at offsetting for my natural gas usage at home. Is I was like, well, I could go to these offsets, which are a lot cheaper, but it seemed not as effective in my mind. It made me more concerned. I was like, well, I feel like going directly through Bullfrog is that this money is going directly to it's like you're saying, it's displacement, which made a lot more sense than just paying $10 to $20 a ton.
Right. Well, I mean, it's whatever you do, what you can, and whatever makes most sense to you. I'm of course thankful that you've chosen to do it through Bullfrog, but whatever you can do.
You kind of answered Greg. Greg's got a question there on the right. Can you start small on Bullfrog and build up?
In what sense?
Well, like for me, there was basically the $33 a month. There was no like, hey, can I just do 1 ton or $100 or anything like that? I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, you my guess is that, Greg, when you signed up, you probably signed up like an online package. What you could do is look at your bills. Percentages Bullfrog take to redirect the money. I mean, it's. Let me get to this thing first, and I'll talk about it, sort of how it's broken down. So what I recommend is you can take the package that's basically an average home your size, or you can look and see track your actual consumption. You may find that you're using less. You may find that you're using more, and then you don't tell us. but for the most part, I find that it's good to be aware of what you're using, particularly if you're taking the step to reduce your carbon footprint in the first place. So I'm just looking at Pete's question. So when you look at your usage and then you make a goal, and I would certainly listen. It's an expensive world out there, and energy is expensive and only getting more expensive. So it's if you want to say only do part of your footprint, it's better than doing nothing. So if you want to start small and build up over time, that's up to you. There's options online that are sort of cookie cutter, and you could always contact us through the website and say my actual usage is X, or I only can afford to do 50% of my footprint or this, and so you just sign up for whatever. It's a voluntary payment, so there's no limit to it. What percentage does Bullfrog take to redirect the money? I don't exactly know how to answer that, because it's all baked into the premium that we charge, and they don't even tell me the exact sort of way it's broken down. What I will say is that there's we're a B Corp, so we're pretty strict in terms of how we function, and we're also part of a much larger publicly traded company, which is Spark Power, and we are not by no means rolling in it. We're a fairly modest company, so I don't have a good answer for that, unfortunately. I would say that there's a little bit of a markup on the RECs. But it's also an option that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. So there's a lot of administration work that goes into it. Most of my electric and natural gas bill is not based on my consumption. So if you reduce your consumption, it's not reflected on savings on your bills. And you're talking about other charges to do with, in Ontario, we have the debt retirement for our nuclear. There's a lot of taxes. In some cases, there's the carbon tax is seen in the bills. So is there any push towards having billing directly based on consumption? And this is generally for your electricity bills in general. Like in your bill, there is a cost, like the bill, like it's listed there. It'll say you're paying X amount, 11 cents per kilowatt, or $6 a gigajoule, or whatever it is. And then there's the taxes, and then there's the infrastructure fees, and then there's a million and one things that they kind of roll in there, and I think that it's so different. I don't know where your who your provider is. I do know that here in Ontario. Sir?
Yeah. Sorry? So in Alberta, I'm in Alberta, and
yep.
I mean, more than 50% of my bill has nothing to do with my consumption. So, yeah. For example, I switched from a gas stove to electric. My gas, I consumed half as much gas. My $50 bill went down $1.
No, that's odd to me.
Well, that's because there's all the transmission and distribution charges on top of our bills. I understand New Zealand, they pay for how much you consume. I mean, their rates are higher, but you pay for what you consume. So the problem is my neighbor might consume twice as much electricity as me, but they pay per kilowatt. If you look at their bill per kilowatt, they pay a lot less per kilowatt than I do. So it's not encouraging people.
And you've compared it, Eli? Alberta's a
Well,
funny
because
market, right? Because
yeah,
yeah, sorry.
because
Like Alberta's.
we all pay that fixed fees. So
Mhm.
my reducing of my consumption, where other jurisdictions like New Zealand, if I use half as much power, I'm going to pay half as much on my bill. So I just wonder if there's any
I
push.
will, yeah. I haven't heard that as being um as being a push. You know, the push is always to lower bills, lower bills, lower bills. I think that there's a lot of I can't speak to Alberta. As Alberta is weird. It's one of the most free markets in Canada in terms of electricity. So there's a wide variation in the price, and it's one of the least expensive overall in terms of the country because of
Not
not
per
anymore,
kilowatt.
or it was
No,
not per
we're
kilowatt.
no, but well, yeah, we have a free market.
But
Like I have a solar system, so I sell my power and I get a great price for selling my power onto the grid. But I just find
yeah, so
it'd be like going to the gas station and putting 20 liters of gas in my little car, and that guy pulling up with a pickup truck and getting 100 liters and paying a lower price than me, right? Because so much is on the connection. So it just seems like that would encourage us to actually save, to consume less if we actually base it on. Yeah,
it's no, it's all really good points. I of course I don't work for a utility, so it's hard for me to have an insight onto how the pricing is built. I do know that it's generally, you know, that there's a lot. So there's a lot of equipment that they feel they need that is in need of repair. So that's often what's driving up the prices. I know more about the fights that go on in Ontario over the, you know, nuclear versus gas versus all these debt retirement fees, and there's a lot of artificially low prices. Like I do think that there's probably a situation where for the most we're probably underpaying for our energies, even though it doesn't feel that way by any means, and I'm in the same boat as all y'all. And so it's a funny thing, you know, when we talk about Bullfrog as being a voluntary, you know, a voluntary additional cost, and it's just for the environmental attributes. It's not always, as you might imagine, the easiest sell, but it can have an impact in terms of fighting to decarbonize. Just looking at some of the other.
Yeah, I think Mike, that question is great. Is how much growth are you forecasting? Or are you seeing a lot of growth at Bullfrog? And
so, yes, yes, we're seeing a lot of growth very recently. Obviously, the pandemic hit us pretty hard because, you know, if most of our clientele are businesses and office spaces and things, and what happens when everybody's not in their office, and a lot. So we put, you know, huge swaths. You know, every moksha yoga or moto yoga in Canada was Bullfrog powered. They all have been closed all year. So that's, you know, 100 studios or something, 70 studios all closed down. So in that regard, it has been tough. But what we're seeing, and what I'm sure a lot of people are seeing in sort of the corporate world, is that companies and big companies all have targets when it comes to carbon reduction. And so you every time you see a company that says, you know, by 2030 we're going to be, you know, carbon neutral, or by 2028 we're going to be 50% of our carbon footprint, that means that they need to figure out ways to do that. And we are not the cheapest way by any means, but we are an effective way to do that without installing new things or doing big stuff. So we have been getting a lot of calls from larger entities, but you know, our small business, which is kind of has been our bread and butter of our community, has been difficult. And another interesting thing that is because of that is it's become harder to find the supply of these renewable energy certificates because more people are going for them. And that actually was something that we had both dreaded and hoped for, because basically the concept of Bullfrog 15 years ago is we're going to, you know, create a market for this stuff, and eventually the market, the demand is going to be so much that more and more of it will get built. And so if the demand is there, more gets built. And so we've been in a situation where we're building large scale projects to satisfy larger companies that need to, that want to procure those RECs at a either a cheaper price because of the volume of it, or a so we're actually seeing the growth of new projects, and that was always a long-term goal. So what just happened? End of the slideshow. No, am I still here? Oh yeah,
You're still here. Yeah.
So our forecast is reasonably good in some places and difficult in other places. The one thing that is good and that I've seen this time, you know, in 2008, when there was a financial crisis, leading up to that was a huge growth in the idea of corporate social responsibility and you know, a lot of momentum for organizations and businesses and people in general to implement environmental programs. And when the financial crisis hit in 2008 and the housing bubble blew, all those dried up. So there was a period of you know, that was the first thing people cut, so sort of climate plans. And what we're seeing now in this great you know, in the pandemic and you know, a lot of the economic hardships that have come because of it is that we're not seeing the same sort of abandonment. I think people are sufficiently spooked about climate change that hasn't gone by the wayside. So that's a little bit good to know. Do we invest in the Great Bear Rainforest Carbon Project? I'm not sure specifically. I do know that we were sourcing from some projects in the Great Bear Rainforest. We're sourcing RECs to support, or not in near. There's a Great Bear Wind Farm, I believe it was called. That was a source of RECs.
That would be great for you if it was full circle, having been inspired to help fight for the environment.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, be going back, working on a project there.
Knowing, like, you know, I've actually gotten to visit the area, and we've supported some projects in the area. You know, we've supported a project in Bella Bella, which is certainly in that, you know, community center solar projects. Was supporting some of those coastal regions in I think Kitasoo First Nation and Hanigwatan are a couple that were building small scale projects that are in the coastal rainforest. So not, you know, I haven't gotten to like go hug a spirit bear, but certainly knowing that we are, you know, supporting some renewable energy in those regions, and you know, just the full circle of seeing that specific pipeline, the Northern Gateway, seeing that get totally abandoned and watching other major pipelines fall by the wayside has been satisfying in that full circle kind of way.
Great. Well, I think unless anybody else has any questions right now, we'll say thanks for your talk, Dave. Oh, favorite carbon calculator. There's so many. There's so many out there.
Oh, sorry, the 2020 Catalyst program is amazing, and I've taken part in it. Oh, so that was a direct message. Susanna, it's nice to meet you. I've been to almost all of you. Hey. But sorry, do I have a favorite carbon calculator? Oh, hi, Susanna. What I was going to say about the carbon calculator, I like the one on the EPA website, the American one, that tells you how much of the various things you're displacing by, you know, if you put in 1 ton, what that represents in like garbage bags and like acres of forest saved, and how many train cars of coal you're, you know, so you can get those kind of things. But I don't have it's not a specific one that I like in terms of carbon calculator. If you have a good one, please share it with me.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
Dave, thanks a ton for your time.
My pleasure.
I want to remind everyone that to do your reflections, because it sounds like if you do your reflections, you're definitely getting prizes. Not that prizes are the reason to do it, but hopefully this month has made you think about your energies and kind of figure out what you can do. I think Dave's gave us some great insights, and personally, I feel like displacement's a lot better than offsets. Although there's times when I've used less.ca also, which I didn't realize was under the same company. But you know, there's times when you have to fly and do things, and an offset's definitely better than nothing at all. So yeah, thanks for helping us continue the discussion. I hope that everyone here takes it home and talks some more about all this. And without further ado, does Izzy have any closing comments to say?
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Dave. And thanks everyone for joining. Please keep up with the challenge. Keep starting discussions in the Facebook group, and shoot us emails if you have any questions or you're having any tech issues or anything at all. We really appreciate all your participation. So thanks a lot. And Dave, thanks for your time. I know it's later on out there in the
Yeah, enjoy your
Oh, my
fire.
pleasure.
Enjoy your night.
I gotta go start a fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Friends are sitting in the backyard, hopefully already.
Nice.
Hey,
Good night,
take care,
everyone.
everybody.
See you
Okay.
next time.
Bye.
Right, thank you. Bye.
Dave.